Cyril is now being protected on such a blatant manner. The PHALA PHALA, in a normal constitutional democracy, Chris, would immediately bring the impeachment of a president. And then this week's declaration that the National Prosecuting Authority of the Republic of South Africa decides that they do not see the possibility of success in the prosecution of PHALA PHALA. That the National Prosecuting Authority has now decided that they are visionaries and that they are prophets to say that this cannot be prosecuted and it won't have success. What a lot of rubbish. Lead by example.
Wow, guys. So in a really interesting ruling, the National Prosecution Authority has actually decided not to prosecute President Cyril Ramaphosa on the whole PHALA PHALA scandal that rocked the entire South African parliament and government, especially in the, government before the government of national unity. And now Nea de Beer is blazing extremely hot on that case. Let's listen to what Nea de Beer has to say about this. I'll be back for some really interesting final thoughts.
Now, I've been wondering, are you stuffing your couch with dollars because it seems to be okay now?
Shocker. Absolute shocker. Now, Chris, let me put this into perspective. There's a lot of stuff coming up when you say the word PHALA PHALA. Dit is soos 'n verdrinkende suurpaal in die water. This is a blatant, so obvious use and abuse of power. That's it. Now, the dogs are going to come out on this, and may I say, the first howling dog out of the fence is me. So let's set the tone for the rest of the couple of days. In the prosecution, because remember, this started 2020, this whole saga, and then the reporting of the state security leader who turns around and says that there was PHALA PHALA, and in actual fact there was a theft of those PHALA PHALA dollars, and that was the whole scenario. Oh my goodness, it then hits the public. And Cyril is the focus. This is Cyril's property, this is Cyril's couch, and this was Cyril's people. So the PHALA PHALA, in a normal constitutional democracy, Chris, would immediately bring the impeachment of a president. Because when one looks at the charges, we are not only contravening SA Revenue Service, we are not just only crossing the Foreign Exchange Service, we're not just crossing the matter of a president who acknowledged, which is against the presidential handbook, that he was doing business. And all of that undeclared. Now, you don't need a formidable charge sheet. You also don't need to be a legal expert. This is bloody common sense. He's wrong. Now, take all of that. No matter where you stand in politics, if you are pro him or anti him, Cyril Ramaphosa is accused, number one. Same words he used at the Zondo Commission about the ANC. Now we get this headline just a couple of weeks ago that the people that are charged with the theft of said count dollars are going to be prosecuted and they are going to appear in court, and we are then going to get chunk bites of the truth, so help me God. And then suddenly, in this period, we had the pre-GNU accusation from every political party that says that he must go to court, he must be charged. GNU happens. Silence. Silence. And then this week's declaration, Chris, that the National Prosecuting Authority of the Republic of South Africa decides that they do not see the possibility of success in the prosecution of PHALA PHALA.
Despite the evidence.
Overhanging evidence. Case closed. And then what does the GNU start to say? You know, the GNU parties. They are upset. This is very weird. And certain parties are saying that they will go into the parliamentary portfolio committees and ask questions. What a lot of rubbish. Lead by example. Lead by example. I'll refresh the memory of the people of this country that at the stage, if you can recall, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, as a sitting president, I recall, was actually brought to court and charged by SA Rugby. The old lion, Louis Lake, actually took Nelson Mandela to court. And I clearly remember in that era, because I was in that era, that Nelson Mandela was told by the members of the ANC to tell Louis Lake to go to hell, and that how dare he take Nelson Mandela to court. And Nelson Mandela said, Cyril, hoor jy? Mr. Ramaphosa, hear this. Nelson Mandela said that if I as the president do not heed the justice system and go to court, then what would that set an example to the rest of the citizens of this country? What a time, what an extraordinary man. And now, I'm telling you, the current leadership is not following that example. This case should not be closed. This should now go to private prosecution. Now the other people like AfriForums and Solidariteit and Citizenry for Honor, OTA, we now need them to get up and say, you the politicians, all of you are now silent. This thing should not go to bed, because if a president can, then what the hell about the rest of us? And that is my opinion, Chris. Common sense. Cyril is now being protected on such a blatant manner that the National Prosecuting Authority has now decided that they are visionaries and that they are prophets to say that this cannot be prosecuted and it won't have success.
Yeah, brilliant, guys. What do you think? I think it's kind of like really interesting. And for me, I just thought to really go through a report I found on Daily Maverick on this whole issue, really comprehensive report, and that really analyzes the whole thing about the NPA's report on their declining of the prosecution of President Cyril Ramaphosa. So it says that the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP in Limpopo, Advocate Mukali Ivy Thenga, has made a decision not to prosecute anyone in the PHALA PHALA case after a comprehensive investigative process that was conducted by the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, according to the NPA spokesperson Mthunzi Mhaga. All right. It says that the investigation was based on the criminal complaint that the former head of the State Security Agency, Arthur Fraser, filed with the South African Police Service in June 2022. This complaint actually laid against President Cyril Ramaphosa related to the theft of a large sum of US dollars from the president's PHALA PHALA farm in February 2020. Okay. Now it argues that this complaint, which requested the SAPS to investigate the conduct of the president and that of the Major General Wally Rood, alleging that it amounted to the commission of money laundering and corruption. Now the investigations also covered any possible contravention of the Income Tax Act 58 of 1962 and Exchange Control Regulation of 1962. This was subsequent to the break-in and theft of an undisclosed amount of dollars at PHALA PHALA farm, Bella Bella, Limpopo, actually stated by this Mhaga. Now, this Mhaga now still, this is the NPA spokesperson is now still speaking, saying the decision not to prosecute was taken by the DPP after a careful assessment of all available evidence presented to the prosecutors by the DPCI. Thenga now concluded that there was no reasonable prospect for a successful prosecution based on evidence contained in the docket, says this spokesperson Mhaga. Mhaga still says that the Director of Public Prosecutions made her decision in line with the prosecution policy of the NPA, which states that a prosecutor, in deciding whether to institute criminal proceedings against an accused person, must assert whether there is a sufficient and admissible evidence to provide a reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution. So Mhaga also said that various factors had to be considered when the prosecutor evaluated the incidents, the evidence, including the strength of the case for the state, the availability of evidence, whether the state witnesses were likely to be credible, the admissibility of the evidence, the reliability of the evidence, and also then the strength of the case for the defense. All right. Now, in commenting on the NPA's announcement, the Executive Director of Corruption Watch, Karam Singh, said unanswered questions remain despite the decision not to prosecute and decision of other offices of no ethical breaches or prosecutable criminal offenses. Now, there's the idea basically that throughout the PHALA PHALA scandal, President Cyril Ramaphosa has been called upon to account for his actions before several international bodies, including the Parliament, the Public Prosecutor, and the South Africa Reserve Bank. In August this year, it argued here now that, the Daily Mail reported that the EFF wanted a constitutional court to find the National Assembly guilty of violating the Constitution by voting against taking action on the cash in couch allegations. And we know that Julius Malema was really heavy on the whole PHALA PHALA case, where he argued, and I think that he was the one who really made the world really understand how money was hidden in mattresses at the PHALA PHALA farm. This was a rhetoric that was actually spoken a lot by Julius Malema during this period. And so it's really interesting now that the NPA actually has decided not to continue with this investigation. I listened to a speech by one of the leaders of the opposition and the Progressive Caucus, Vuyo Zungula, where he spoke about how in South Africa it appears now that there's a law for ordinary citizens in South Africa and also then a different law for the president. And he actually argues that that's demeaning and demeaning the integrity of this National Prosecution Authority, which is one of the major vehicles for driving justice in South Africa. So to have such a report from the NPA to him really felt like a disrespect to South Africans, and that the president should actually be questioned, and this criminal case shouldn't be swept under the carpet. And also, if you listen to Julius Malema's media briefing, I think was last week, he argued that the PHALA PHALA case would not disappear. President Cyril Ramaphosa would not escape the whole PHALA PHALA scandal. It would always come back, even, especially after the GNU's time, and that, regardless of what it is that the NPA has done now to really silence this case, that the case remains, and that the whole case with money that was declared, especially from the perspective of Vuyo Zungula anyway, he argues that in South Africa it's a law that any cash amount, foreign dollars, that actually I think it was amount to $30,000 or so, should actually be reported to the central bank, but that was not done in this case. And so they had a literal case of the president violating the law and the Constitution. And you could hear now from Neo Debia that if Nelson Mandela could actually face he was sued by the other party during his presidency, and if he actually could report to the court, then President Ramaphosa should be responding and acting according to the laws of the land to which he's president, and actually face the charges levied against him in court, because that then maintains the reputation of democracy and the independence of the democratic institutions that make up the democracy in South Africa. And so that's where South Africa actually finds itself now with this whole PHALA PHALA case. It appears that it might be swept under the rug. The MK party has a reason to say that they would want to push for the continuation of this case by hiring a private investigation into this, to which the National Prosecution Authority has warned that the MK should be cautious in going that route. And so we see that it's all just a mess around this whole PHALA PHALA case. And one of the interesting parts about it all for me is the silence of the DA. So before now, the DA actually, and the likes of John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille, now this is according to Vuyo Zungula, argues that the DA really pushed hard before the Government of National Unity for the PHALA PHALA case to be followed up tightly, closely, President Ramaphosa to be called out and possibly impeached and all that. But now that after the Government of National Unity, the DA is silent. So Vuyo Zungula sees a problem with that. Same with Julius Malema as well. And so now that the MP NPA has silently kind of like swept this case down the rug, under the rug. It remains for South Africans to really follow this case, and really, who knows where this whole thing with Phala Phala lies. It might just disappear forever, and we'll have to see the end of that case. But anyway, what do you guys think? I think it's a really heated one, but share your thoughts. Let's all hear from you guys. Share your thoughts in the comments.